Welcome to Season 2 of Under the Sisterhood. Over the 31 days of March, we are celebrating 31 Women's March of Voices during Women's History Month. We will have intimate conversations that will uncover each woman's superpower and find out how they use these superpowers to help other women. That's 31 days honoring 31 women and their superpowers. This is a podcast to celebrate women and all that they do in our world. I'm Elizabeth Elfenbein. Let's get under the hood. Today, we're celebrating Ildi Sebestyén. Ildi is a mother, daughter, sister, wife, auntie, friend, and she's also known as Doula Ildi, a certified birth doula and co-founder of the Budding Belly, a birthing support and education organization based in New York. As a birth and postpartum doula and childbirth educator, she supports individuals and families throughout pregnancy, labor, delivery, and postpartum. She believes that everyone should receive evidence-based, unbiased information to be able to self-advocate and choose the care they desire for the best possible perinatal experience. Raised in Szeged in Hungary, she's obtained a master's degree in biology, anthropology, and pharmacology. Having lived and worked in 4 different countries around the world and with fluency in 3 languages, she has a unique appreciation of cultural and linguistic nuances. Currently living in Westchester, New York, when she's not assisting births, she enjoys spending time with her husband and 2 daughters, hiking, cooking, baking, and skiing. I couldn't be more delighted to be celebrating Ildi during Women's History Month. Welcome.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Very excited to be here.
This has been such an interesting journey and exploration with so many amazing women, and it's so important. It's Women's History Month, and every woman needs to be celebrated. But it's particularly interesting with all of your experience. You have a unique perspective on womanhood in so many different ways. So why don't we get going?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, everyday life. I work with so many different women, and that's really an honor for me. But as you mentioned, I'm from a tiny town from Hungary, far away from here, and I never in a million years, as a small girl, would have imagined I'm going to live in the United States and have such an incredible journey behind me, and I'm still on it, I guess. You know, I feel like it's unfolding as I go, and it's really beautiful. I grew up in a very small family. I'm an only child, not by choice, unfortunately. My mommy had 7 pregnancies, 6 losses, so that was a tough journey for her. And maybe because of that, pregnancy and babies and even loss was very openly discussed growing up. I remember the last pregnancy. I remember her belly growing and being big, and I was around 3, and I was excited. I was waiting for my little sibling to be born, and I remember losing the sibling. I remember her telling me that this baby is not with us anymore, and I feel like it triggered something in me. I always had this calling of like working with people, and especially working with women and working with babies, but I didn't really know. I was searching for the path, and it's really hard in Hungary because when you're 14, they ask you to choose a high school based on your interest and based on your further interest of what you want to do with your life. I mean, at 14, what do I want to do? Eat junk food and sleep till noon. What would I do? so I kind of looked around and I was like, what is it that I'm good at, that I enjoy? And I was like, chemistry. Okay, I like that. Biology. I enjoy that. I like animals. I used to ride horses. I was like, maybe I could be a vet. And I said, let's do that. So I applied to a high school which was mainly science focused. And after 4 years, I applied to be a vet. And I didn't get into university. I didn't pass the exam. My second choice was to become a biologist. And I was like, that's pretty cool. I kind of like could do research, or I could do anthropology, work in a museum, something like that. And I took 5 years, so 4 + 1. I got my master's, and I was like, you know what? This doesn't sit right. I want to explore first. I want to explore myself. I want to explore the world. And that was a very unique opportunity. I moved to Spain.
Wow.
Because
Excuse me, how old were you then? How old were
I
you?
was,
Because if you
yeah,
started
when I
high
moved to
school at
Spain.
14 and you did 5 years, was that 19 when you had your master's?
So I did 4 years of high school, so that's
Okay.
18 plus 5 years of master's. So I was
Okay.
23 when I moved to Spain. So I was in my early
Okay.
20s, but I was still looking for what am I going to do with my life? And it's crazy if you think about it because it's 9 years later and I still wasn't 100% sure.
But you
And
might not,
when I
excuse me,
moved,
I want to just interject for a second
yeah,
there for all women. It's, I mean, it's nice if you're on a path and you have a thing that you're fairly certain of. But, and I would say
absolutely.
even today's, your daughters are going to be probably reinvent themselves 10 times in their career. So I don't think at 23 not knowing, I think it's wonderful that you can keep seeking and finding. So I just think it's
I
important
agree.
that women know because that's a lot of pressure to put on yourself. It's good that you wanted to
I love
self-discover.
that. Yeah, absolutely. And it was bittersweet because as an only child, my parents were like heartbroken. They were like, "What do you mean? Well, maybe we thought you were moving to the capital city, Budapest, but now you're going to Spain. You're going to a total different country." So they were losing the little girl a little bit, right? I moved. I moved for a boy. Funny enough, I kind of like was in love with someone, and I thought, "Oh, this is a great adventure, and let's see what it brings." And well, it didn't really go very far. However, I got to know a new culture. I learned a new language. It was not easy. It was really hard. I would say the first 6 to 9 months was a real struggle. I went home to do Christmas celebration with my family, and I said to my mom, I don't think I'm going to go back to Spain. I can't do this. This is killing me. This is too much. I'm heartbroken. I am struggling, living day to day, not even month by month. It's a struggle. I was teaching English, teaching Hungarian to kids, like just trying to do whatever work just to stay on my 2 feet. And my mom said, "No, you're going to go back and you're going to prove it to yourself, because I already know, but you're going to prove it to yourself that you can do this."
Good for mom. Don't you love
I
mom?
know. That must have been so hard. It must have been really hard because she clearly saw that I wasn't well,
Right.
so but I feel like she understood that that's what I needed, which is so powerful. I can't even, yeah, I don't know if as a mom I'm going to be able to say this to my kids. I
I
hope I
think
will
you
be.
will. I think you will because you'll see that when the time comes.
Yeah,
It's amazing how you could be on a certain path with very certain ways, and then suddenly the path, things alter. And as a mother, you sort of have to go with the flow and feel
yeah,
into it and lean into it versus you can't force, you can't go against the tide with children. It
yeah,
doesn't work.
yeah,
So it'll be
you're
curious.
right.
So
Yeah, me too. So I went back to Spain. I struggled a little more. Then I started to find my path. I was on it again, and I was making friends. I was mastering the language. I was living. I was enjoying myself. In my early 20s, that was important, obviously, but I was also gaining a lot of experiences, and I was growing as a person. And I met a boy at a company I worked for. It was actually against company policy to date. We were
mm,
not allowed to date coworkers. Lucky for me, he was just leaving the company because he accepted a job offer and was moving to Denmark. So I said, "Well, before you move, I think we should get together." Well, he's my husband now. So
that's beautiful. That's
that
wonderful.
little short romance as I planned didn't really work out. We're still together, being married for almost 14 years now, and it's been a great journey together. So he moved to Copenhagen and asked me if I would like to move with him. A couple of months later, I followed, and I moved to a brand new country, brand new city, which I didn't know much about, new people. And again, it was another great experience to find myself again and to be able to figure things out. As soon as I arrived, a couple of days later, he said, "Sorry, I have to go to the US for business. I'm back in 3 weeks." And I was like, "Well, okay, see you later." And I was in this brand new place. I didn't know anyone. And by the time he came back, I had a job and I knew the city better than he did after three
That's
months of
one.
living there.
That's amazing. Well, that
And
goes back to what your mom putting you
right.
back on the path, saying, go, tackle that, take on that
Yes.
challenge to prove to yourself you can. So that's like
Yeah.
resilience.
And
That's
I, and
amazing.
I know it's something to do with my personality as well, because I'm a type of person who doesn't give up easily. And I'm also a very outgoing person, more sociable. I know and I understand that it's not easy for everyone, right? I know that there are people there who are more introverts or having a harder time making these connections. So when people come up to me, and I recently did a talk at the Hungarian Consulate in New York City about changing career path as a woman, and people came up to me and they said, I wanted to change so many times, but I'm not brave enough. I'm not so outspoken, not so outgoing, not so social as you are. And I said, baby steps. It never been easy, even with the personality I have. It requires a lot of courage, a lot of failing and getting up and doing it again, a lot of embarrassing situations, a lot of great victories, and all of that. It's a mixture of things, right? So I feel like you just have
That's
to take that
beautiful.
first step and then let your feet carry you afterwards.
That's amazing. I mean, it's so interesting, and that is like kind of our wiring, when you have that sort of innate resiliency and courage and strength, and you lean into that power, and and I think the other thing about that, LD, is trust. You clearly trusted yourself. You might not have known it at the time, but in hindsight, you can look at it and say the only reason why you could go forward is because you had some sort of trust in something, yourself, something higher, whatever it may be. But that's amazing. So continue on. So what type of job did you take when you were in Copenhagen?
Yeah, that was super interesting. So towards the end in my Barcelona life, I actually started working as an event planner and at the
Mm,
marketing company. So I was starting doing events because they needed someone who could speak good English and was, outgoing and didn't mind traveling. And I really enjoyed that. So when I moved to Copenhagen, I found this job at an online investment bank as an event coordinator. So I kind of really segmented off of my original path of like science and biology and find myself in this kind of finance world, which I didn't know much about. But what I love as a Hungarian person, when you have a degree and when you apply for a job, they ask for your degree very seriously. And of course, there are some jobs like a lawyer or a doctor where you need, or like a teacher, where you need your qualifications. But there are other jobs where what I experienced abroad and what fascinates me compared to Hungarian opportunities is they didn't ask for my degree. They didn't say, oh, you're a biologist. What are you doing here at the bank? They said, this is the job we're offering. These are the things we expect you to do. You have 3 months, prove yourself. And I feel like it was a great way to give opportunity to people, and worked out for some, didn't work out for others. It worked out for me and I really enjoyed it. We organized a lot of very high level financial events around the world. So I traveled a lot, which I really, really enjoyed. That was before kids, of course, before COVID, all the good times. And I was having fun, but then the financial crisis happened. And as one of the banks, this bank suffered as well. And the events team was the first team that they let go. So that was the first time in my life. And let me tell you, the last time that I let go. And whew, it was tough. I actually had a panic attack. My boyfriend back then had to call the ambulance one night because I just couldn't breathe. I thought I'm having a heart attack. And they told me, no, this is just a panic attack from that big new change in my life. A few weeks
mm.
later, we actually found out that there's a chance for us to relocate to the US and to move to New York. So we did.
So, and
So
what
we
year
moved
was
to New
that?
York.
Yeah, what year was that? I'm
It
curious.
was the beginning of 2009. So that was not an easy year to come to New York. It was right after the financial crisis. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just our anniversary of arriving to New York on January 30th. We arrived in 2009, January 30. And he had a job, which was wonderful. But I also was like, eager to work and find something. I speak Spanish. Living in Spain, that definitely helped. But when I arrived to New York, I realized I'm not the only person here who speaks Spanish. Like, that's not really the niche I'm bringing here. So I have to find something else. So I said, okay, I speak Hungarian. Not many people. There are some people, of course, in New York who speak Hungarian, but not as many as they speak Spanish, right? So I actually managed to find a company, a Hungarian American owned company. It's a small private equity investment firm. But because I had the kind of like banking knowledge now behind me a little bit, that helped, and I secured an associate position. So I worked for this company. It was really great to kind of like speak Hungarian throughout the day, but also English. So it was a great opportunity. But it wasn't a dream job. It was a job, and that's what matters. When you move to a country, you need to make a living, right? So it was a job, and I kept searching. I was part of a lot of non-for-profits in New York that time. which really felt good. Like it felt like I was contributing and helping and giving back as much as I could during those times. Because as a young 20-something person in a relationship, I had time, right? I had free time. Now I don't, but like back then I had a lot of free time, and I was trying to utilize it as well as I could. And then we got pregnant earlier than expected. I was very nervous because of my mom's experience with all the losses, right? So I seeked a specialist. We had plenty of conversations, plenty of tests, but it was never really clear-cut answer to like, will I have the same struggle or will I not? So we said, let's start trying a little earlier than we ideally want to have kids, and then we'll see what happens, because we might have, like my mom, 6-7 years ahead of me before I'm able to have a child. Actually, we conceived for the first try, basically. So we were the other end of
Very
the
lucky.
spectrum.
You're very lucky.
Super lucky, especially now working with women I see, and I really am appreciative about that, how lucky we were. So our first child arrived in 2012. She was born in New York. And through a friend, through one of the nonprofits I worked for, I heard the term doula. And I was like, tell me more. I'm intrigued. I know about midwives. I know about OBGYNs. I know about the different ways of giving birth, birth centers, hospitals, sometimes home birth. But what is a doula? That was 2011. So she was expecting at that time, and she hired a doula. So she kind of like, passed me the information. I read about it. I was like, this is fascinating. Is someone who you hire, who is basically contracted by you, not the hospital, who is there to take care of you, your emotional needs, your physical needs, help you advocate, help to make your partner feel like, wow, they know what they're doing, right? And also like help you transition into this crazy journey parenthood. And I was like, this is beautiful. This is what aunties and cousins and sisters and moms did when everyone lived in tiny villages and we couldn't fly across oceans, right? But we don't have that anymore. I was a great example of that. My husband being British, I'm being Hungarian, living in a faraway place. We didn't have any family support. So it was very obvious to me that this is something that would work for us as well. And I convinced my husband, I was like, let's look into that. What do you think? I know it's an out-of-pocket expense, but what do you think about this? So we met a couple of doulas, and then we hired one. And I had a pretty scary experience towards the end of my pregnancy. I was unexpectedly induced to a late complication in my pregnancy. My husband wasn't even around. He was traveling for business, and we were moving apartment the next day. We had a lot of things going on. So the doula was there with me the whole time, up until my husband, of course, showed up as well. And he joined the party. But it was life-changing for us. Like, he was the one, after the experience, said to everyone, oh my God, are you expecting? Are you planning to have kids? Hire a doula. Do it. Ask people to contribute. Yes, it's a lot of money. Make a doula fund, like have a less expensive dress for your wedding, save some money for the doula, whatever that is. Because that experience, having a child, is so much more important than other expenses you might find in your life. Skip the Starbucks coffee for 2 months. Save some money, get a doula. Like, he was telling all these speeches. He's a sales guy. He's good at this.
That's great, selling the doula. That's awesome. Well,
I loved
mean,
it. I loved
it's so interesting though for him to get behind it that way. And, with your biology background, your personal background, back to the comment around, the emotional, the safety, just
Yes.
things sort of, it sounds like naturally. I look forward to hearing how that all came together for you, because it's
Yeah.
like I can see the pieces of the puzzle coming together, and how it would
Slowly,
make so
yeah.
much sense. And also like just be so gratifying on so many levels,
Yeah, exactly how it felt. Yes. So I had an offer from my company where I worked at that time, right? That I can have 8 weeks non-paid maternity leave. And they expecting me back after. So we looked at each other and we said, is this a joke? We both from Europe. In my country, people can stay at home as long as 3 years. Like, it was shocking to me. 8 weeks, like, your baby is barely 2 months old and you walking away. And also that time is not even paid. That was 2009, by the way, or 2012. Sorry, that time when I kind of like worked for the company. I worked there for 3 years. I was shocked, right? So we sat down, we discussed what the next steps should be. And as you probably heard, and Elizabeth, childcare in the New York City metro area is a different story. So we looked in different options, nanny shares, daycares, nanny, you name it. We tried everything. And then we realized that it actually makes sense for me to quit and stay at home with my daughter, at least for the first year, until I figure out what I want to do. So exactly what I did.
And interestingly, I just want to say something about that. So I had 3 children.
Mhm.
I got pregnant 9 months after I got married. We were both, I mean, we were not making a lot of money, but I had to take time off. I had my first baby in 1993 in New York City. Uh, and I had 8 weeks paid maternity leave and then whatever vacation. So I think I took off 3 months for my first daughter, Olivia. And then a year later came my second, pretty much the same.
Mhm.
But what I will tell you, what was interesting was to your point of what do you do, nanny, what have you, and you start to do the math, what makes most sense in terms of both being able to pay your other bills. Like, doesn't make sense
Exactly.
if the mother doesn't make that much money. Like for me, I was lucky because I both loved what I did and I made enough money to make it make sense. So we did hire
Yeah,
a nanny, and then the nanny took on the 2 children. Then it made even better sense. But
that's
it's
great. Yeah.
so expensive to raise kids in the city or anywhere to be a working mom and have to be paying for childcare support. So
Yes, yeah, absolutely. No, at that point I did not make enough money to have it make sense. So that's why we kind of like decided together. And it wasn't a bitter decision for me. Like I was excited about that. It wasn't something like, okay, I bite the bullet, let's do this. It's for our family, for our kids. It wasn't like that at all. It was like one of those like no-brainers, like, oh, okay, pay all my money to someone who would be lovely, but still a stranger, not the mom. And then, me going to work, like what's the point? So we decided that I do that, and about 6 to 8 months into it, I realized like I'm craving the social interaction. I'm missing going to work. I'm missing um, even the cognitive challenges. Right? It's so important.
exactly.
So
I kind of
I said to my
knew
husband,
that about
yeah,
myself. So yeah, yes,
yeah.
the
So I
challenges.
said to my husband, like, listen, I feel like she's at a great place, but I want to do something. And he said, well, what would you like to do? And I said, remember that we had that amazing doula? And he's like, yeah. And even before I could say the next sentence, he looks at me, he goes, oh my God, you would be so good at that. And I was like,
That's
well,
wonderful.
that's exactly what I was thinking about. So I took a doula training with DONA, Doulas of North America, here in New York City. I really enjoyed the training. One of my friend's mom was visiting from Hungary, who was gracious enough to offer childcare for my baby while I was doing the training, which was incredible. So lucky, everything worked out. And then soon after I finished my training, I started working on getting my certification done, and reading my books that I needed to read and getting clients and this and that. My husband comes home and he says, "So I think we might be moving to Seattle." And I was like, okay. So that's what happened. We moved to Seattle, and that's where I started my company as a doula. That's where I set up my sole proprietorship. That's where I kind of like connected with the local doulas and doula certifying agency, and just kind of like that's where my career took off, I would say, in 2013. So I've been doing this for 10 years now, and
Wow.
it's been an absolute joy. It is not an easy job. It's a very beautiful, a very special job. I feel honored every time someone trusts me to be there at this huge and very special event of their life. But it's also traumatizing sometimes. You see a lot of things, and we can talk about that later. So Seattle was wonderful. It was hard because it was really far from both of our families, right? It's the West Coast. It's really far from Europe, and the time difference was a killer. But my mom retired around that time, and she actually managed to get a visa, and she came to live with us twice for 6 months, and that is how I could start my company. Again, thanks to my mom.
Oh,
It's funny how it kind of came full circle with my
actually it
mom.
did. And oh, wow. I have goosebumps with that. That is so beautiful, right? She must have been so touched and so proud of you just to
Yeah.
go after that. And like, I just have one question, well, probably more than one, but the one question that comes to mind with you just saying that, it comes full circle back to mom. Like, when you were going through the process, were you like recognizing, going back to age 3 when you had that, watching your mom and the traumas you saw with her
Mhm.
and her, and her, I don't want to call them miscarriages, but getting pregnant and not seeing
Yeah.
full-term babies. I mean, did you recognize that when you started and decided to become a doula, or was it that your doula experience, like, because sometimes that's a subconscious thing. You wouldn't remember at
Yeah.
3, you know.
No, absolutely. You kind of, like you say, you recognize it. With that hat at 30, I looked back and I was like, oh my goodness, she went through those by herself. Back in the 80s and late 70s, partners were not allowed in the hospitals. So she went in and then she had to give birth to these, stillborn babies, or she had to take the medication, wait for the miscarriage to happen,
Mm,
all by herself. And her mother was there, local, but I remember my grandma as well, working 3 shifts a day. Like she was a very hardworking woman, because my grandfather had a stroke, so he couldn't work. So he was at home by himself, totally just, sitting in his armchair, being paralyzed on his left side. So my grandmother had to pick it up and make sure that, they had enough to pay the bills and have food on their table.
mm,
So she was supporting my mom. My grandma was phenomenal in a way she could, but she was also still working, busy woman at that time, because my mom was young. She was 27, 26 when this happened. So they were very different times. So it's absolutely true that it made me realize, like, no one should go through this alone. No one, ever. And that is why when you're a doula, there's so many different type of doulas. I don't
to
know if you
talk
heard,
about
but there,
that, yeah, yeah, talk about that.
yeah. So there's obviously birth doula, which I do, labor support or birth doula. There's a postpartum doula, which I also do, which is more the help once you home with the child. There are overnight doulas, people who help just a nighttime with a tiny baby, to help you take the baby to you when you breastfeeding, take the baby away, burp them, swaddle them, and then bring the baby back to you, or feed them a bottle, whatever that is. There are death doulas, people who help people
Mm,
who are going through a terminal illness, right? And people, these doulas help the family with their grief, and then with their logistical nuances after the person passes, to sort everything out. So it's not for the family members and the close members to kind of deal with those stuff, the bureaucratic stuff, or even packing stuff up, right? There are bereavement doulas who support people who lose babies during pregnancy and they have to give birth to that stillborn child. There are abortion doulas supporting people who choose to have an abortion but don't want to go there alone, or don't have the support to go through that experience. So there's so many different type of doulas, and I feel like it's really beautiful. Doula is actually a Greek word. It means a woman who serves,
mm.
someone who supports,
That is
someone who cares.
amazing. That is beautiful. I had no idea. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing. Wow. A woman who serves. Mm. I mean, that is you said that you are a birthing doula and a postpartum. Are those your 2 specialties, you'd say, like for your company?
Yeah, so you have those are my 2 specialties, and you have training in both of those fields. So you have to complete your training, and then you have to, not have to, but like you should. I believe in that personally, but you can get certified in those fields. So I chose to be certified. There are doulas who don't choose to be certified. I chose to be certified, so I'm a certified birth and postpartum doula as well. Yeah, so that's what I do. But it's really interesting what you said about that kind of realizing. Um definitely kind of like comes to mind a lot, even when I'm driving to a birth, or even when I'm
I
leaving
totally
someone's
get it.
house who has like a colicky baby, a different, a very difficult situation at home, maybe a single mother. I always realize, like, oh my God, like my mom did all that, all those losses, all that suffering alone, without anyone really being there and just holding her and just embracing her and just telling her, I'm here. You're not alone. You don't have to do this alone.
Mm.
So
And
it's
how
it's
long?
it's very interesting.
I mean, that,
Go ahead.
yeah, no, no, no. That, I can viscerally feel it. I have goosebumps and chills. So when you're doing the birthing experience, how long is that process? Do you go in and you sort of support them in understanding the breathing? Like, what's the experience like? And then the
Yeah,
postpartum.
so they usually contact me at some point in their pregnancy, most commonly somewhere in their mid second trimester or early
Okay.
third trimester, but second trimester is the most common. And it's not just a lot of people think, oh, doulas are for people who want an unmedicated birth. I don't even like to say natural because every birth is natural. Some are medicated, some are unmedicated, right? People think doulas are for unmedicated birth, right? And it's not true. Um, I would say 70% of my clients choose to have an epidural even before, going into labor. Nothing wrong with that. I look at it as a tool, which is right for
Thank
them,
you.
right? So absolutely. So doulas are there to support the individual who is giving birth, the pregnant individual. If it's a woman, identifies as a woman, it's a woman. If not, it's a birthing person. And the family or partner who comes with this individual. And sometimes there's no family. Sometimes we're talking about by choice single parents. And that's also admirable. And that is the time when they need most of the support. So when they reach out, they realize that along this journey, they would like to have help with self-advocacy. They would like to have help with breathing techniques, massage techniques, help them just navigate the hospital system, understand what is normal, what is not normal. As a doula, I never diagnose. I don't prescribe. I'm not a clinician. I always refer if I see something, sense something is not okay or out of my scope, I refer them to the healthcare provider.
Mhm.
I tell them never Google things because that is very dangerous. But I'm there to reassure. From the experience I have, close to 300 births now, I've seen enough to know most of the time what is normal, what I hear, what I see, what I smell is normal, and what are the things that are not normal, right? So I can direct them the right way. We usually meet twice during pregnancy, what I call prenatal meetings. They're usually about 2 hours long to get ready, to get to know each other, to prepare for this experience, but not just for labor and birth. We also start talking about the postpartum time as well.
It's
Talk
that's
about feeding the child, talking about the basics such as burping, diapering, nail care, cord care, sponge bath, stuff that we have in Europe, baby nurses who come to your home after you're home from the hospital. In the US, there's no program in place for that. You
it's
can be with a fresh cesarean scar 4 days postpartum and they expect you to show up at a pediatrician's office. Well, in Westchester, we are spoiled. We get in our car and we drive. In New York City, when I had my first child in Brooklyn, you walk. So 3 days after having my baby, I walked to the pediatrician in a freezing March day when I didn't even know if I can stand very much, right? So it's crazy to me. There's no other word I can come up with. This is bizarre. Like this is the time, if we look at cultures around the world, in South America, some African cultures, Asian cultures, this is the time when the women are the most vulnerable. All they need is caring, healing, resting, recuperating. Except we expect them to get out and roll the stroller and see a pediatrician, right? I mean, this is nonsense.
I
So
actually have a story about that. I just want to insert because
tell me,
I
yeah,
was in
tell me.
Brooklyn. So I lived in Cobble Hill at the time, and my pediatrician, I wonder if it's the same pediatrician, lived about 5 blocks from us. Fantastic pediatrician. And I had just had my second baby, Georgia, in March, really cold, but we had a snowstorm. So the snow
Oh
was
boy,
5 feet high. There were literally, I don't know, what is it, like galleys created,
a little
like
path, yeah.
a path created. And, you were like in enclosed bankments you were going through, almost like a walking igloo, if you will. So, so my 1 year old, so Olivia would have been one years, had a terrible fever. And
Oh,
so I have the baby in the front pack. We go over there together as a family through these trials and tribute. I can just so relate to that experience. And I was in no position, I was in such a vulnerable state. And the other thing is like, and then when you have your babies so close together, you feel like you have no choice but to show up. I think I was fortunate because maybe I didn't have the postpartum Like when I have my third, maybe a little more, I did pretty well, but maybe it was
Yeah.
also because I didn't even allow myself to feel that. You know what I mean? And I think that
Yeah.
that can often happen when
Absolutely.
women
Yeah.
are forced to get back into action in all these different capacities and don't have the
Yeah.
ability to rest and really come down from the whole birthing experience and the whole change. Having a life inside you, life is out, and all the different things your body's
Huge.
going through.
Oh my God, it's huge. And all the giant hormonal shift, right? Once the placenta leaves the body, that huge drop of hormones. And then your brain is just going like, whoa, I don't know what I feel. I feel happy one second, but next moment I feel very unsure and anxious about everything around me and very sad, right? All of that is a lot to handle for a brand new parent. It's a lot to handle. So I try to kind of prepare them not just for the labor and birth, because on average speaking, we always say that's about a 24 to a 30-hour experience. But then we have parenthood for the rest of our lives, right? So I always say, let's focus on the postpartum period as well. I can't talk to you about what's going to happen for the first 18 years of your baby's life, but let's focus on at least the first few weeks, which are the toughest, because we tend to forget that parenting is a learned skill, right? And we have these really high expectations towards ourselves of like, I have to be very good at this. No one is good at this. We all start from the same place and we learn as we go along, right? But we are the generations, I would say the past 2 3 generations, that have typical, like, I'm tough, I can do this, I don't need to ask for help, I'm a problem solver, right? So we have these really high expectations for ourselves, and if we start failing at things because everything is new, baby just spat up, but you're changing a diaper, they're pooping everywhere, you're like, now what do? Do I wipe the vomit first or the poop? But I'm also need to change my pad because I'm also leaking blood. And you're standing there and you start crying because nothing else you can do at that moment, and you haven't eaten and it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, right? So we have to realize that it's tough, and this is the time when we have to say, I cannot do this alone, and it's okay. I need help. I need my village,
And
right?
I just want to interject in
Those
that.
women.
And it's an interesting thing because, with all the conversations I've had, that's one of the things that keeps coming up with, which is women don't ask for help. They're not comfortable. And I think the thing about, when you're pregnant with your first child, you have no idea what to expect in that birthing room coming out of it, the postpartum. I had some trauma with my first, and then the second, when I got pregnant right away, I was like, I let out a feral scream because I knew that experience was so hard.
It's coming again.
A medicated natural birth, but yeah, I was like, I don't think I can do this. But I think the thing is that so when you walk into it, and yeah, I got the book What to Expect When You're Expecting. It made me so crazy. I had to stop reading it. It was like Google. It was like you don't
That is
want to
that is the
Google it.
book. That is the book I tell people to stay away from. And
Right.
hopefully the authors of the book are not listening right now, but seriously, like, that book is anxiety provoking. Like, it tells you every single thing that can go wrong instead of
Exactly.
focusing on the
That's
things that are beautiful.
thank you for reminding me of that. I would get so anxious. I'm like, you know what? Maybe it's okay. Put the book down. And I didn't read it for the second child, but I think, like, because you say there's no manual for this. Well, there are manuals for it, but they're not really manuals that, because
No,
women are feeling so many things and you have to lean into those feelings. You can't just be strategic and tactical about a
no.
pregnancy. You just can't. It's a feeling experience. So go on. I mean, I think this is amazing. I mean, I'm really
Yeah.
helpful.
So basically, going back to the birth support. So I get them ready, and then when labor starts, we are kind of in communication the last couple of weeks of their pregnancy, last few weeks of their pregnancy, and from the moment they hire me, I'm on call for them, meaning that if something would go wrong, God forbid, I am there to support them at the hospital, to support them at that induction, at that whatever, that stillbirth, whatever that is. Doesn't matter how many weeks pregnant they are. If everything is okay and labor starts naturally, they call me and we chat on the phone. I give them suggestions, send them ideas, but I want them to feel confident about laboring on their own just for a little bit. And they're going to get to the point when they're going to get antsy and they're going to be like, shall we go to the hospital? I don't know, let's talk to Ildi. So they talk to me, and that's the moment when I say, can I come over? And I join them at home.
That's so
And a
nice.
lot of times with first babies, the biggest mistake we all make is show up too early. at the hospital. And they sometimes send you back home. And it's not a fun thing to be in labor and be in a car. So I try to make sure we labor at home with them, and I help them make the hardest decision, which is when to start going to the hospital, knowing where they're giving birth, what is the weather like, what time of day it is. Is it Friday, 5 o'clock, rush hour traffic, and we, giving birth going from Brooklyn to Manhattan? Okay, we have to factor that in as well, like all of that, right? Some kind of logistically kind of figuring it out and helping them kind of problem solve and troubleshoot. And then we continue the labor at the hospital when we show up, and I'm there the whole time. Doesn't matter if it's 7 minutes or 70 hours, which I've been in both scenarios, by the way. I'm there. It's continuous labor support. And throughout that is the emotional support, the physical support, helping change positions, helping digest the information, what's going on now, helping them, make their decisions. I'm not going to tell them what to do. It's not about me. I'm going to help them present the evidence-based information, help them ask for more information from the providers if needed, and help them find what they feel like is the best decision for them.
Wow.
A lot of times people think doulas are advocating for people. I cannot advocate. I can advocate for myself. I cannot even advocate for you, Elizabeth. I can help you to advocate for you. And I do the same with my clients. I help them find their voices. When I was in Seattle, I worked for Open Arms, which is a wonderful organization.
Mm-hmm.
And because I speak Spanish, I worked with a lot of young Latina moms. And it was shocking to me to see how badly these young women were treated, how disrespectfully they were talked down. A baby wasn't even born and they were approaching them with questions about birth control. It was disgusting. So this is something that's very important to me when I'm working with someone who is non-white. Absolutely, all my white clients getting the same treatment as well, but someone who is non-white, you're gonna find the institutional racism. It's right there. You always find it. Hospitals are large institutions, so it always comes out. So I have to help them find their voices a lot of times.
That's you know what? I want to just interject there. It's great that you're there to help them find their voices in those moments, but you don't realize that you're helping them find their voices probably for the rest of their lives. In
I
those
hope so.
vulnerable moments, it's amazing if a woman can. And I can't even imagine. I actually had one woman who I didn't end up interviewing. She think her life got complicated, but she told me of a story, a woman of color who got pregnant at whatever age, and she was treated so badly by the gynecologists. She was in an academic, and it was, I was horrified to hear the story. The to your point, the institutional racism, the injustice of that, to make a woman, any woman, feel anything, that to not,
Yeah,
like, you would think physicians would be able to take that off the table and just be good doctors, but they're still human, right?
it doesn't work that way, unfortunately.
Mm,
So that is why I find it important to to really be there throughout the whole process, because when we bring labor and birth, which is a normal physiological event, when there's no complications, of course, when we bring it to an institution like a hospital, which is a financial institution with
mhm.
pretty strict jurisdiction as well, right? They have policies, they have guidelines, they have rules, very serious protocols to follow, which I do respect and I do understand. But because of that, the treatment towards patients tends to change. Instead of embracing this beautiful, unique event of their lives, they look at them as any other sick patient in the hospital, right? You're there to have a child. You're not sick. Your body's doing what it's supposed to be doing. So the
Mm.
treatment should be different. And there are healthcare providers who honor that. And you see beautiful experiences, but you also see the opposite, unfortunately. I have
Yeah,
to
I
tell you
think
that.
that
So,
the system has gotten, the healthcare system
yeah,
has gotten so bad in terms of treatment, and for so many different reasons, the 5 to 8 minutes. So for them, it's just, to your point, it's almost like the patients are a number, versus, and to your point of
yeah,
the fact that they're going there and doing something beautiful, bringing life into the world and not recognizing it for what it is just, it's
yeah.
just another indication of that, right?
Absolutely. And I try to stay about 2 to 3 hours after they had the baby as well. That's a time when they're still in the labor and delivery room before they get transferred to the maternity ward or the postpartum area. Make sure that, if breastfeeding is something they choose to do, or chest feeding, I support that. Make sure that both parents or the parent who just gave birth have something to eat, something to drink, answer their questions. These are the times when nurses are so busy. They have so much charting to do, putting equipment away, like cleaning things up. I wish the nurses could do more on the emotional level, and I know they wish it well as well, but it's incredible how much pressure the system puts on them with the computer system and the chartings and this and that. So the best part of their work, the labor and delivery nurses, lost, right? So it's gone, because that emotional support, they hardly can provide it because they don't have time to provide it during the 12-hour shift. So a lot of times when I'm at the birth, the nurse looks at me and goes, "I'm so glad you're here. I couldn't do this. There's so much to do. I'm so glad, because we can make a good team." And that is always my goal, right? When I work at
That's
the
so
hospital, I'm
nice.
not there to create tension. I'm there to work as part of the team. Of course, I'm not a medical professional, but I'm there as a team to care for this patient, to care for this birthing family.
It's like you become an extension of the family. And I know it happens.
Yeah,
It's like a quick indoctrination, but it might happen quickly, but it's one of those well, circumstances, it's amazing how circumstances can bring people closer
absolutely.
together.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, but that's
Yeah,
really beautiful. I mean, I can't even imagine having had, although I had some good nurses with my first two children, but I can't even imagine having you by my side, a doula like that, who just would care so deeply to support every aspect. To your point, the emotional, the physical,
right.
it is so complicated, the physical, emotional,
Yeah,
and psychological feelings that are going on in women as they're having, going through both the birthing process, the afterbirth,
yeah.
and yeah,
And just
wow.
being in a hospital is also like a scary place, right? I mean, hospitals
Mm,
are the places where we go when something is wrong. So it's kind of a weird place to be. You're wearing that gown, the machines that are beeping, the lights are bright, the whole medical, like, words and language is a totally different, like, environment for people. And people who've never been sick in their life, it's anxiety provoking to have a baby at the hospital. They also feel secure and kind of like comforted by it, because they want to make sure everything is a-okay, which I support. But it's also, I see, bringing their anxieties up, because they're like, whoa, this is all new. It smells different, it looks different, it sounds different, they're saying weird words. Is everything okay with the baby? So sometimes all I'm doing is just kind of like translating the jargon, right? And just be like, oh, that means this, or like, that means that. Like, you don't have to worry, that's normal.
well, that's
It's a lot.
thank you for sharing that. I mean, this is helpful for women to know also that it's available. As before we move on to the next question, is there anything else you want to say about your story? So you're a doula today. You have a company called.
Yes. So we actually came back from Seattle to New York. We were jumping between New York, Seattle, New York, and then I was in a partnership in Seattle. I formed a partnership with a wonderful doula called Birth Matters Northwest with Mariah Fallin, and then I had to say goodbye to that when we relocated back to Brooklyn. And then I met Samantha Harris, who is my wonderful doula partner currently, and we formed together the Budding Belly, which is our
Mm,
beautiful company, and kind of offers a well-rounded support to families. We offer birth doula services, postpartum doula services, overnight services, and I'm also a childbirth educator. So I teach childbirth preparation classes and lactation support we do, and newborn care classes, and we also help with sibling preparation. So it's
oh,
it's
that's
it's
wonderful.
amazing. It's
Actually,
very,
that's actually a really great area. So it's really
yeah,
thinking about the whole family experience, from birth to
yeah.
the whole process of the journey from being pregnant to
Yeah,
the
and what
after.
was interesting
Mm,
is we also have a second daughter who was born in Seattle. So it was very interesting to me experiencing the medical environment, giving birth in both cities, the East Coast, West Coast as well, and a huge differences. And it's really interesting to work as a doula in both those places. So it's fascinating. So yes, we're back in New York now, and I work here. We were in Brooklyn for a few years, and then we came to Westchester a couple of years ago, and that's where we are. And hopefully, we're gonna stay here. But with our life, as you heard, kind of a little bit like to move, pack up and move type of family we are. You never know.
well, let me ask you a question. To that point, are you practicing in New York City, or are you practicing in Westchester? Do you sort of go where the
Yeah,
need is?
exactly. So most of my clients are in Westchester and Lower Connecticut area, but I also take birth in Manhattan, and occasionally I go to Jersey. Yeah.
Okay, that's really great for people to know. So your story is just phenomenal. I mean, I know just women hearing about this, because you're right, there's many different ways to think about the whole experience. So what is a doula? I love the fact that you shared that and you educated us in the process. Now we're going to move on. And I think, it's probably clear to all the listeners to what your superpowers are. But what would you say your superpowers are, LD?
I would say one of my superpower is help people trust their bodies and their ability to do things.
Mm,
Absolutely.
and how
That's
do
one
you
of
do
them.
that? Yeah, tell us about how do you do that? That's really interesting.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of times it comes with helping them understanding the process of what our bodies and our hormones and everything can do and how it was designed by evolution, how, it is able to open and then go back to original afterwards, and helping them really realize that what they can do, it gives them more confidence in their ability of like, okay, so it is not as scary as the media and the Hollywood movies put it, or the horror stories I heard or read on the internet, right? um, Bringing it back to the point where making them realize that, and it's not just about birth, it's about as a parent as well, to know how much they're actually able to accomplish. um,
Mm,
I always tell
mm,
everyone, like, it's one of those things that it's going to be the hardest thing you ever do is to give birth to a child, but it's also one of the most rewarding thing. And regarding parenthood, as a new parent, I always say everyone, because these are the things that we have to say out loud. It's one of the most overwhelming time of your life, being home with a newborn, yet the most underwhelming you're ever going to feel, because
yeah.
you're disconnected from everything and everyone. And it's going to suck sometime, and it's going to be beautiful sometimes. And it's okay to say, it does suck today. I don't feel like a good parent today. Or like, this really stinks that the baby cries this much. It's okay to say it out loud. It doesn't make you a bad parent, right? Or to what we talked about earlier is like the I need medication for giving birth. Wonderful. Awesome. You know your choices, based on your values what works for you. Awesome. That means you believe and trust that you make the best decision, and you know that your body is going to be able to do that because you made that decision for yourself, right? So I
I
feel
want
like
to
it
add
ties
one
back.
thing, one comment to that for women out there who
Yeah.
are listening, which is, I had an experience, and in my day, in the 90s, women were very judgmental of other women for the choices they were making. Are you doing natural? And they didn't talk about it natural as being medical, natural as being natural without medicine versus.
Hmm.
And so I did natural with medicine, and I would do it all over again because it's really painful. It's really hard laboring. But if you can endure the pain and go the distance without medicine, God bless you. I admire you. I'll herald you. But I had to do that. And the thing is I felt in a few different and a number of circumstances. Are you breastfeeding? Are you not breastfeeding? The choices that
Right.
women make, just support each other. Like the
Exactly.
women are making different decisions for different reasons. Know there's probably a reason, and support the
Yeah.
woman and don't judge, because in those
Yeah.
periods we are so self-conscious, those early stages of motherhood. So any sort of judgment, our emotions are running high, our hormones are out of
Yeah.
whack. So anyway, I just wanted to add that because I think,
No,
based
I
on what you
appreciate that.
mm,
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. You're absolutely right. And I feel like my other superpowers are just, as from my job, you probably find out already, is like I love caring for people. I feel like supporting people, and it doesn't have to be just birthing people. In general, I love connecting with people. I love caring for people. I genuinely am interested in how you're doing. How is your day going? I love nourishing people. I love baking and sharing with my neighbors the bakes I made. I love
that's
doing dinner
beautiful.
parties and just, feeding people because I love cooking and I love seeing people having a great time. I'm definitely a people person. I'm definitely a person who thrives on social interaction and social relations. And the pandemic was really hard for me because of that, obviously,
Mm,
with the whole Zoom
yeah,
part of
no.
it. But at least, we went through it as well. We learned and we got stronger from that too. But I love a good hug. I love a good laugh. And I and I feel like I'm good at giving good hugs, and I'm good at making people
mm,
laugh. And as we know,
mm,
laughter is medicine, right? So
yes.
I feel like some of those are my superpowers for sure.
That's wonderful. How are you using these super? I mean, so you have deep powers that are really deep, and then you have these lighter ones, like, oh, the laughter, even though it seems light, being able to do that, and it is
Right.
medicine, is pretty powerful. How do you use these to help other women?
Well, through my work, I obviously help them have an easier experience, right? Becoming a parent or going through the parenting few months of the first times of being a parent, I feel like. And in my everyday life, I feel like women, as you said, are the type of people who most commonly don't ask for help when they need it. So I'm pretty good at like spotting it or just offering it when I know that they might need it. And I'm pretty good at being proactive about asking people for things like, hey, do you want to come for a walk with me? Not asking them to do me a favor, but realizing that this is something that probably they would benefit from. So
Mm,
I reach out not just for me, but I feel like I'm reaching out for them as well. I'm part of my local, as you know, how we met, I'm part of my local school district's international mom group, which is a very powerful group of like unique individuals from around the world. I organize hikes and walks for them. I reach out, we have coffee, we go and see Broadway. Like these things are important to me to make people's life who just maybe here in this country for 2-3 years a little easier, because I've been there. Because I've been there and I know how
mm.
difficult it is to be in a new place with new people. So I feel like bringing some light, and light meaning not just the light, the brightness, but also light, some breeze, some air into difficult times. That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, well, and that's beautiful. And as you described doula, it's being of service. So it would make sense that you connecting and organizing all these things for all these women and different people, because you want to make their experience better. Oh, that is just honestly, Ildi, this conversation has been so amazing. I'm so inspired by you. I want to ask you one last question, which is if you have this opportunity to give a message to women around the world, what do you want to say to them? They're all ages, they're all cultures, they're all backgrounds.
Mhm.
What does Ildi want to say as you end the conversation?
Yeah, I would like women to love themselves. I would love to see women really loving themselves and caring for themselves and being fierce and taking chances in life. Don't be afraid of taking the chances. Don't be afraid of change. One of my high school students said to me, who is not with us anymore, the two hardest things in life is starting something and finishing something. So don't be afraid of start something, or don't be afraid of finishing something and start something new, right? So take that chance, take that first step. And really, when you do that, when you love yourself, people will notice that. And then more doors will open to you, I feel like. Yeah.
Wow. I'm like, wow. Thank you so much. I am so,
Thank you,
as
Elizabeth.
I said, so honored to be celebrating you during Women's History Month. You have made history. You've come here. You're doing amazing things on behalf of women and really role modeling behavior, which is what we as women have to do. So thank you so much, Ildi.
I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for asking me to join you. That was really, really a fun time. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thanks for listening to Under the Sisterhood. If you haven't already, please give us a quick rating and review on Apple or Spotify. And make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn so you can hear from more amazing women. This podcast is created and hosted by Under the Sisterhood LLC and Elizabeth Elfenbein, produced by Elizabeth Elfenbein and Zach Slaff, and edited by Zach Slaff. The music is by Ayla Schaefer, her song, Rose.